Hey everyone, how you guys doing? Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys for viewing into the Art of Sound show that we do every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I am your host, KJeih. Absolutely, absolutely. And this is a K-Sound event. All of this works up under K-Sound. Please be sure to visit the website, KSound, www.ksound.com, and view some of the things we have available. We are blogging, and we have special things that we're saying, tips, tricks, techniques, some of the latest, greatest, or whatever. So we're doing something all the time. Also, our fan page, facebook.com/Facebook. No, facebook.com/KSound. Took me a little bit. Got a lot of things going on right now. But as you can see, I've actually been playing around with some of the camera angles, and yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, we got a great show for us, prepared for us this evening or this night, depending on when you watching this video. Mr. Donyea Goodman. Yes, I had a great opportunity in interviewing him. He could not make it live tonight, so what we did was we pre-recorded him on early in the week, and I had so much fun talking to him. It was like amazing, the stuff he was saying, he was sharing, and he has a lot of great information that he's sharing, and I felt like it was a good idea to show you guys, share with you guys the interview. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and switch my camera and show you guys what he's talking about. All right, everyone, the legendary gospel music producer, Donyea Goodman. All right, I'll be back with y'all shortly. What's good, everyone? This is your boy KJ, sitting in the studio live with my man Donyea Goodman. It's definitely a pleasure to have him live on the show today. This brother right here is someone I've been following for quite some while. Been following him, been probably over a year now. Discovered him on YouTube. Most of the videos you were putting together were like a bunch of bumps in different ways and different variations, and I just thought it was pretty cool how it's just like I just thought it was mind blowing, the ideas you come up with, the concepts, and yeah, by me being a drama, it was definitely something I was like, wow, never heard it done like that, but okay, cool, you know. So I just want to introduce Donyea Goodman to my my viewers or whatever.
How y'all viewers doing? I wanna thank you, man, KJ, for having me, man. It's a great honor, man. When you hit me, I was kind of taken back by it, and so I appreciate it. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing and what your contribution to the music industry as a whole and what you're trying to do. So thanks for having me, man.
Wow, that right there. That's enough right there. I appreciate that. Donyea Goodman said it. Wow. All right. Well, I know a lot of viewers would love to know like how you got started um, via the music industry, well, the production, or just whatever angle you like to take it. How did you, as a kid, what was it?
I mean, music ran in my family, so I remember as an infant uh, watching my family, do the music thing. My uncles were drummers and bass players. My aunt which is probably one of the most influential people in my life as far as, playing keys and, playing organ. I learned by watching her. Um, but, growing up in church, um, I was one of those guys that would, shed until I got good and then play it. I was in a situation where to, um, I was forced to kind of grow up quick when it came to music because, my father was pastoring and, the organist was in the military, so he transferred out. And so he wasn't able to, to play for us anymore. And I was playing drums at the time. And so I refused to just stay on the drums while we didn't have an organist. So I got on the organ and tried to fiddle around, and it embarrassed myself to getting better. So a lot of my childhood was passed up. I didn't go outside and play, and I didn't run around with the other kids. I practiced 6 to 8 hours a day, um,
Wow.
every day, even Sundays, and until I got better. And uh, about 6 months later, I was playing for my dad's church as well as other churches. So and I didn't have a musician to come in and be like, hey, this is how you do this, how you do that. All I could do was study tapes. Back then it was cassette tapes. All I could do was study cassette tapes. Rewind and play. And what I didn't know I was doing back then is I was training my ear.
Hmm.
And before I knew it, I could hear a chord and I knew exactly what it was. I didn't know what the chord was called, but I knew exactly what it was. And, um, all I had was a little Casio CT640, and that's how I learned to play. And I didn't know about music production per se, but I knew I can tell now that my desire and my hunger for it was there even back then, writing and composing music, because I fooled around and I found two cassette recorders. So I took one cassette recorder and I would record me playing a bass part on my Casio, and then I would put that tape up and play it, and then put another tape in and record it on the other cassette recorder. And I was overdubbing and doing all those types of things with no equipment, just two cassette recorders and a Casio CT640. I had no idea what I was doing then, but you know, I wanted to do it. I wanted to compose. And I mean that kind of grew into who now. And back then, I didn't know it was a career or anything like that. I just loved it. You know, and so God bless my parents. They never bought me the latest keyboard or nothing like that. I only had enough to just practice to be good for church. And yeah, and I fooled around and got a hold of a karaoke machine. You couldn't tell me nothing then. Uh, and the story goes on and on. And then I started messing with DJ mixers and stuff like that. And finally, years and years later, I graduate high school. You know, um, I come out of the military, and I find myself in Detroit. With some members of my family, and this guy hits me up, and he's like, "Man, come check out this 4-track machine and this 8-track machine." I didn't know what those were, but he brought them over, and I'm like, 4-track, 8-track, what's that? And he hits play, and I'm hearing this stuff, and I'm like, "Whoa, you could do that with that?" So you know, and again, by then I only had I had like a little house Yamaha board, but that house Yamaha board and that 8-track, we had a time. You could tell us nothing, you know.
Yes, sir.
So I started tracking doing that, and that by that time I think that was when the Cord Triton came out, revolutionized the industry when the Triton came out.
Yeah.
And And I remember, you know, as a kid, you kind of make decisions, that are kind of immature, and when you really don't know what you really don't think of the future. You never really make decisions, about the future. You always make decisions about the right now. You don't never really invest in, okay, later I'm gonna have my own studio. You don't think about that. I just want to play. I just want to get on. That's all I want to do. Even and then still not. It wasn't clicking that, hey, this could be a career for you. You know,
Right.
it didn't click for me until I turned 20, and I ended up in Seattle, my hometown, and my uncle sees, my late uncle. He's watching me play at this music store, and he's seeing what I can do, and he's like, "Come with me." And so we got in the car and we drove to this church, and we met with one of the first influential uh, people in my life musically, like in the industry. Um, and he was a pastor. He's a pastor of the church, and we walk up there, and my uncle says, this is who you need to meet. So his name is Gary Wyatt, one of the most prolific writers ever, in the gospel music industry alone. And so uh, I meet him, and he's like, so what's going on? What brings you here? And my uncle says, listen to this. So he has me sit down, and him and my uncle are talking about, shooting the breeze, talking about everything, basketball, everything. And the whole time, there's this, I'm on this Sonic keyboard with the headphones on, and I'm tracking stuff out. And I take the headphones off, plug into the speaker, and I hit play. And Gary looks at me and is like, "Oh yeah, you need to start making money with that." And it it was then that I remember, he taught me the supreme basics: humility, how to treat people, how to work with people, how to help people. And he was like, it's not just about talent; it's about character. This is what you got to do. And I remember my very, very, very first um, album that I did, and I don't know where the artist is now. Her name was Felicia Holyfield, and she came with some songs on a tape, and so she's just singing a cappella. And so he's like, write music for this album, and I'm sitting there, and I write music. It's like 10 songs, and I think I only got like $75 a song.
Wow.
$75. But that was my first achievement, in music. That was the start. That's what like propelled me to like, you know what? I can be good at this. I can be good. I can do this. And so after that, I started surrounding myself with people who were better than me at what I did. And that's how I got better. I just surrounded myself with people who were so much better than me, and I brought whatever I could offer to their table. Whatever, they felt they needed, I found a way to do it, and so I could bring value to what they had, so that I could continue to learn. And man, after that, here it is. Honestly, about 40 something records later, here it is. Here I am, on YouTube and all that. And this was before YouTube and everything, so you weren't known by putting out videos and all that. You had to actually go to the events and hand out business cards, and do demo tapes and send them to people, stuff like that. So I mean, that's pretty much how I got started, man. And I got into the YouTube thing because I felt like I didn't get into the YouTube thing to get famous or to show anything off. I got into the YouTube thing because I wanted to share my music with the rest of the world. Um, that's how I got into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what's up. So for you, it was pretty much a passion and not something that your mom and dad kind of shoved through your throat.
No, no. They, you know, they actually they actually had to muzzle me a little bit, because the determination was there. I mean, I wouldn't stop. You know, they tried to get me to focus on other aspects. Even with my parents, they were like, "Man, why don't you try to be a scientist? Why don't you try to do this? Why don't you try to play football? Why don't you try to?" And I just, and the thing is I was honestly, I was one of those kids who, whatever I wanted to be, I could do it. If I wanted to play football, I was good. I was fast. I could play. If I wanted to play basketball, I could play. If I wanted to do whatever, I could do it. But it was never my passion, and so I would start it, and then it would just kind of drop off because
Right.
I just didn't want to do it. But music was something that was always in me to do. I would I would skip school, my lunches at school. I would skip my lunch to go sit in with the jazz band in high school to practice.
Wow.
I was skipping my school lunch to do that, and I didn't tell my parents at the time because my parents, they were really strict, and jazz music was a sin back then. You know what I mean? So I was taught that jazz music was a sin, and so it was like, well, I don't want them to know that's what I'm playing. So
Right.
I just act like I was going to lunch, and since you can't get in trouble for skipping lunch, it was no harm, no foul. But yeah, man, I was giving up a lot of my stuff to go play with them. You know.
Wow. Wow. So were your parents musically influenced? Were one of them singing or playing an instrument? Is that you started?
Well, my birth mother was a huge influence because she was a singer of singers. My birth mother came up during the times of Andre Crouch and Walter Hawkins, and,
Okay.
even Shirley Caesar, different people like that. And my birth mother, even to this day, I mean, I was separated my birth mother, at a young age, and I went back to Seattle at 20. Still hadn't seen my birth mother, and here it is, years later, they're still talking about my birth mother. Still, when I walk in and they say, "You know whose boy this is? This is Gail's boy. That's it." And they'll be like, "Man, your mom could just sing. She could tear the house down." Years later, this is 8 to 10 years later. You know, you know, time has moved on, music has moved on, and they're still talking about my mother. And still talking about what my uncles used to do. And I came up in a family that was very musical, very prolific, very authentic, and they were ahead of their time. And I think, as far as the gospel music industry was concerned, I think that they were way ahead of their time. They were way ahead of their time, and so the church didn't know how to handle that, and so they ended up getting kicked out. Because it was like, "Oh, you don't be playing that kind of music." Oh, that's the devil. The devil is in it. So and so now you hear people, Marcus Miller, Stanley Clark. You hear all these types of fusionistic artists. The late George Duke and all them. This is stuff that I was hearing at young ages, but the church wasn't ready for it. And so now what you hear in the church is like, oh man, they were doing that years ago. It's just it wasn't allowed. It was taboo. You know.
Right.
So, but my parents, they, other than that, my dad, he doesn't sing at all. He just no, he's a preacher, but he doesn't sing at all. And it was my mother and my uncles that
Okay.
were that were that did music and that I watched coming up. But I wasn't raised with them, because my dad was military, so I was raised as an only child. My birth mother was off like with my sisters and stuff. And
Okay.
so it was just me.
Okay. Cool. Cool. So I heard you mention. I don't know if you mentioned your first equipment. That was actually my next question. Like, what was it that I heard you mention the Triton, and I actually have the Triton Studio back here in the background. And
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I had me one. And I had this for like maybe like 10 years. or so.
Yeah.
Was that your first, or what was it your first?
My first real musical piece of equipment um, was the Triton. That
Okay.
was my that was my first real, when I started really getting down and just producing a bunch of music. I still got songs that I've written in just stacks and stacks of discs from Triton.
Yeah.
And I remember my godmom, um, she got her brother to invest in me. He bought me when the Triton Studio first came out, he bought me a Triton Studio 76 key. And I drove down to California to get it, picked it up, brought it back. And I had like some, expansion cards and stuff. And I produced so much music with that thing, it's ridiculous. I still have stuff that I produced with that thing, and I'm like, man, I didn't sell it until 2010, 2011, somewhere around then is when I sold it, you know. And I switched over to Roland after that, But um, Korg was always, that was my first thing, Korg Triton, you know.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
yeah.
That's awesome. I heard you mention your hours of practice each day when you first got started. Do you still practice now? Do you even have the time to practice like you did when you first started?
You know, it's such a pro and con to that. My practice time is not where I would like it to be as far as practicing to just remain fluent and be an efficient musician.
Right.
Um, because my career and occupation as a music producer and a musician, they overlap so much. I have to use my production time as a way of practicing.
Mm.
And even then, I'm not practicing as a musician. I'm practicing as a producer. So um, the only way now, really, to really keep my chops up is playing at church. That's my way. When I play at church, you know, and really focus on, okay, the right habits as a musician and things like that. That's where I have to, that's my practice time because as soon as I get into the studio, everything I'm doing is for writing purposes, and so that involves a lot. That involves a different discipline than practicing. When you practice, you can practice your skills. You can do all of this. You can practice all the drills and all that to make sure your dexterity is there. And okay, let me make sure I can do this in all my keys. Well, when you're producing, it's a different. Your mind has to speak a different dialect because it's like I'm writing music now. So now not only am I practicing the keys, but now my ear is like, okay, I have to. You're practicing being a bass player. You're practicing being a guitar player. You're practicing being a drummer. You know what I mean? It's like all of that is going into, so you get better as a producer, but then when it's time to be just a musician, you got to switch gears. So my practice time is nowhere near as much as my production time. And so it's very hard to find a moment where it's like, I'm gonna just sit down at the keys and just pull up a piano sound and just practice. It's very hard because there's always something on my plate that I got to be doing.
Right. Wow. That's a real awesome answer. A lot of people, a lot of musicians that call themselves producer can't do that. My thing with musicians, because they can play, sometimes they get it confused that they can also produce.
Oh yeah.
So I've watched you, and I feel like you can switch gears
Mhm.
smoothly. You do it really well. So with that being said, like when you come up with production work, is there ever a time where you come up with something and after a while it's like I ain't feeling it, and then lock it up away to come back to it maybe the next day or whenever you get a chance. How does that work with you?
All the time, all the time. Very seldom do I produce something that I like. Very seldom. Um, Most times, it's more about getting what's in my heart and in my head out into a tangible source where it can I can hear it and understand what I'm hearing in here. And but a lot of times, man, I'm a perfectionist, and it's like, oh, that's not quite there. It's not exactly, what I'm going for. And then there's sometimes, I'll have those moments where it's like I'll hit the nail on the head, and I'm like, oh, there it is, But you know, there's times when I'm like, man, I'll sit down, I'll be like, I ain't got nothing. Let me turn it off. I just shut it off and go play Xbox or go do something else. You definitely have to give yourself a break and to give your subconscious time to regenerate ideas. you know and that's why like it's you'll have those times where it's like you're driving, you're grinding, you're doing, and then there's times when it's like you got to step back and do something else so that when you come back, you have something to put down. You have, there's an experience that you had that, now you can write about, or there's something that you heard that can inspire you, and you can integrate it in what you have. You went away, and a lot of times, sometimes I just step away from a certain type of music altogether and listen to something else, so then I can come back and put that in to what I have.
Cool, cool. So do you delete it or you just keep it
I
around?
never, I learned a long time ago, you never delete anything. You never delete anything. Never delete it. Because I heard this statement and it was so true. Because I used to think, man, I'll never be that cat, I want to be able to write that timeless music, but there's so much out there, and it's like, man, it's so much music out there that's just, fly by night, hit today, not a hit tomorrow, and I was just like, well, I don't like it, I'll delete it. Oh, I don't like it, and I heard somebody say, don't write yourself off. Don't write yourself out of a hit. What if the greatest song you will ever write hasn't been written yet?
Hmm.
You know, what if the greatest song that has ever been written has not been written yet? History is still writing itself,
Right.
you know. And it was after that I said, I'm not going to delete anything. I'm going to always keep it because you never know. I got a chance to sit down with Grammy Award winning artist Brian Duncan,
Okay.
and we were doing a show up in North Dakota, and we were in this hotel way up in the mountains, and we was all sitting outside under the at the little table with the umbrella, and I was amazed because being able to sit and talk with an artist like that, and he's a composer, writer, prolific, love him, and he looked at me, he said, man, he said, Donyea, what you're doing now, you're just occupying the time until something that you did where you were just fooling around takes off. He was like, what you think is going to be a hit is not going to be a hit. It's going to be something that I just threw this together just to get it out of my head, you know. And he told me about the song, the hit song that was a hit, Butterfly Kisses.
Yeah.
And he said the writer is a very good friend of mine. He said, man, he wrote that just messing. He wrote that just off of an experience he had, and he just put it aside, submitted it, didn't even think about it. And he was writing all these other songs and doing all this other music, trying to get, further in his music career. And before he knew it, Butterfly Kisses took off. He
Wow.
had no idea. He was like, "You want that song?"
Wow.
So he was like, "Everything you're doing now." This is just to keep food in your mouth and food on the table, and you're just trying to keep your lights on until one of the songs that you're not even thinking about blows up.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. That's what's up. Do you? I'm sure there's a lot of producers out here, because I get them a lot too. Um, I'm more of a motivator,
Right.
so it's really hard for me to, like, even when I get um, rejected, I'm tripping a little bit about it because rejection never feels good, but the blood that flows through my veins is like, come on, let's get it. That ain't the only thing. Let's pick it up and let's make it happen. So
Right.
uh, I just wanted to know if you ever, or what was your experiences, when rejection came, and what did you do to help you stay on top of it?
I got a real good story about that, man. Okay, so um, me and my production partner Quentin Davis, um, we got together and we said, man, we gonna take this music we got, we going to L.A. We
Yeah,
going, you know. And so we got a hold of a publishing agent from CSAC, and he heard some stuff we did, and then we got a hold of some cats that worked for the production company called House of Harmony.
hmm,
They are responsible for Pretty Girl Rock by Carrie Hilson, and they're also responsible for some hits, that made the soundtrack on the movie The Princess and the Frog, and they got a nice little catalog.
wow,
So they were like, man, why don't y'all come on down? With the administrator and one of the associate producers, he was like, y'all come on down, and we said, cool, let's do it.
yeah,
And so we got down there, man. We we got down there, and we went met with the publishing agent. We got in there. We put the CD in, and we start playing, and everybody's in there like, whoa, yeah, oh man, oh this is. And so everybody, we sat down, man, and the producer looked at us straight face, and he said, yeah, you got some dope material, but so what?
wow,
So what? And me and my brother, we looked at each other like, what do you mean, so what? He was like, yeah. Y'all the best. Y'all got just as much talent, if not more, than a lot of cats run around here in LA. Y'all are dope. From what y'all are one of the dopest cats we've heard. So what? And I don't think he knew what he was doing. I think he was trying to prove one point, but he ended up making another. And he looked at us and he said, your talent is not your talent is only 50% of what makes you valuable.
wow,
He was like, you can be the most talented person in the world. He said, what we want to know is, how does that equate to making us valuable? You have to make what you do valuable to somebody else,
wow,
not, not making what you do valuable on its own. Because your talent alone is valuable on its own, but
hmm,
make it valuable to somebody else. How do you make your talent a requirement for somebody else? Somebody else has to want to acquire your talent and what you do. So how do you bring value to what someone else does? And
wow,
after that, I was blown away. I was like, oh, okay. He was like, man, he was like, we can put you in, we can hook you up with all these people. He said, but they got their cats. How are you going to stand out? What makes you different than the next cat trying to get on?
right,
You have to make yourself more valuable than them. And he's like, not necessarily in the spirit of competition, but uh, in the spirit of drive, in the spirit of presentation, character. How you present yourself, how professional you are. Um, and so we left there with one nugget. And then we went to the production studio with the House of Harmony Cats, and we played all the music for them. And we sat down, man, and they start pulling up, stems that they had from like the This Is It tour that they were gonna do, and all these Michael Jackson stems. I mean, it was a connect. And here's the other thing that I found out about rejection. Rejection is not always negative. It
Mhm.
might feel negative, but sometimes it's the biggest compliment you'll ever get. And we sitting there, man, we going through. After we're done with all this music, the associate producer wanted to sign us. The administrator wanted to sign us. Everybody in the company wanted us on their team, and we thought it was it. They called the owner. The owner was the head producer of the company. He heard us and was like, "I don't want to sign them."
Wow.
And we was like, "Why? Is it because we're not good enough?" And the administrator looked and shook his head. He was like, "That ain't it." And we were like, "Well, why? We don't understand." And basically, we found out later it was because he was intimidated and he felt like we would take over.
Uh, wow.
And we were like, "We ain't trying to take over. We're trying to bring value to the team." And the administrator was like, "Man, we know that. If he was smart, he would know that, but he don't know that." And we ended up coming back from LA with nothing but something to talk about.
Wow.
So, but after that, that that lit a fire in us that has not been able to be put out ever. And then that's when we also decided, you know what? We're going to create our own platform, and
Mhm.
we're going to let somebody else. Two things we're not going to do, and this is what I have learned not to do. One, I'm not going to put my dream in somebody else's hands to try to create a platform for it. I'm going to try to do it myself.
Absolutely.
Secondly, I'm never going to try to use someone else's platform to display what I do unless I have something to offer them to make their platform valuable for them.
Right.
You know? So I'm never going to use somebody else's platform to to showcase myself while not bringing value to what they do. You know, and so that's how I've learned to handle rejection. There's been more stories after that, but I've learned that everybody that rejects you, it's not because you're not good enough. Sometimes it's because you're too good.
Wow. Wow. Wow, brother. You. Wow. Yeah. It's 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 actually kind of funny. Like everything that you just said, and yet you remain humble. You
Yeah, man.
shared a lot of things, displaying that you've been out here for a while, and you've gotten your hands involved with so much, and yet you remain humble, and that's why I am so honored to be doing this interview with you. And it's like when I sent you inbox messages, you was like, okay, let's make it happen. That wasn't the response I was looking for. I'm just saying, you know what, and Donyea, that's a cool dude. I would love to have him on the show. That would be great. So I just said, okay, let me like love to have you on the show. Can I interview you? And you respond, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that. I was also waiting on maybe 2 3 days, then went by or something like that with no response, and then like maybe the seventh day you'll say, uh can't do it or something like that. Actually, I've attempted to interview you once before, and my schedule had gotten crazy, and we couldn't do it. But then I asked you the second time, and you still was available to do it. And I just thought that was pretty cool.
Oh
So
man,
like, how are you able to stay humble even after you
man, really, man. You know, there was a time, and I honestly, I have to thank God for how He designed my life, man, because I made a lot of mistakes early. I I was arrogant before. I mean, I know what it is to be arrogant, and a lot of guys. And I found out something about arrogance. It's a lot of guys are arrogant because it's arrogance is probably one of the best camouflages, one of the best forms of camouflage for insecurity.
Mm.
You know, when you insecure in what you can do and what you have, you you hide it behind arrogance. And I remember there was a guy that he, uh, I was playing for his community choir, and he listened to my music, and he was like, "Man, I'm watching how you carry yourself. I'm watching how you." He was like, "Man, you don't have to do that. You don't have to. You don't have to be that way to people. You don't have to treat people a certain way." He was like, "Just be honest about what you do, and you'll go further that way." And I'm a firm believer in you know you know what the Bible says is in terms of how I carry myself in my relationship with Christ. Like what He's shown me through Scripture, as far as the Bible, has helped me advance in music. Let other people play. Let other people lift you up instead of you trying to lift yourself up. Um, Humble yourself, and in due time, I'll lift you up. Like that type of stuff stuck with me. And my parents, they taught me at a young age, man, don't 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 do that. Don't act like that. And I got a chance to act like that and fall on my face and lose everything.
Right.
Um, and then I got a chance to actually see other people act like that, and I helped me see how ugly I was being. You know. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to be the cat that goes around talking about how humble he is. I'm going to just be humble and let how I carry myself speak for itself. When I say I'm going to help somebody, I'm going to do my best to help them. If I can't help somebody, I'm not going to promise them anything and then don't deliver. A good name is better than riches. Like, that's true stuff. I know people right now that are filthy rich, but nobody wants to hang around them. Nobody wants to use them. Nobody wants to talk to them. Nobody wants to, because it just, their name is sucks. Their name is dirt. Their name is bad. And there's people prominent in this music industry that you know of, that you've heard of, people that are household names. That you go to their hometown. That's the best way to find out if a person really has a good name. Go to their hometown and see what they say. You
Wow.
go to their hometown and see what they say, and if everything is negative, then you know what that person is really like. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
There's people that left Washington, gospel and secular alike, blew up, but because they treated people so bad, they try to come back and act like they're big. Nobody went to their show. Nobody went to their concert. Nobody cared. You know what I mean? Because they made a mockery of their name. And I think that's what keeps me like, hey, I can be confident about what God has given me. I can operate in a spirit of excellence and professionalism, and be assertive about what I do, without being arrogant and treating people and mistreating people and being a certain way about it. And I think that's what keeps me humble, like knowing I've been there, I've lost, man. I've had money, I've been rich. I've been rich, and it was in my earlier days, and like I got it so fast, and I didn't know how to handle it. I was arrogant, and I lost it all, every penny.
Wow.
So that's what, for me to even be able to, one, have a second chance to do this thing in a different way, and then secondly, to know what's at stake. That's what keeps me humble, because you never know who you're gonna talk to. You never know who you're gonna run into, and mistreating that person, you have no idea who they are or who they will be or the role they are to play in your life. You never know.
Wow. Absolutely. Yeah, being on top of the world and get kicked down real quick, that definitely teach you some humble, boy.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, more than you know, bro. More than you know.
Absolutely. I've never been on top like that, but I watch people that happen to, and I learned a lot from their mistakes. You know, I know not to be like that, and plus, it's not in me to be that way. I like I found that if you are more helpful and you know what I mean, friendlier to people, your name grows even further.
Yeah.
You know, like I've been in this situation several times. Like when I decided to go live or just me doing music, period. I started, you know, like you putting, you know, some of my stuff out, you know, just sharing my music, and just because I don't get the likes or comments that I'm looking for doesn't mean that they, you know, people are not watching you. They are always watching you. So, you know, they find they find the genuine in you, you know, even when you don't think you've been watched. And then later on, I get like, man, Kay, you know, let's connect or blah blah. You know, I've been following you for a while, and I'm like, really? You never said anything before, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just, you know, it's you being a good person all around. So that's that's what's up. That's what's up. Now, about to switch gears a little bit because I know this is a famous question. A lot of people been asking. In several of your videos on your page, brother, you've post some great music. You know, I love your sense of humor too. I fall out my chair just watching you just clown or whatever. It's just really funny. But oftentimes you're up there with you playing on the organ. I believe it's your church that you play for, and you have the M, no, not just NPC because I come from that background too. But you have the machine studio. Well, not the studio, the MK1 version. That's what it looked like you had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you found the way to navigate through the machine to make it work for your church service, which is pretty awesome. You care to kind of go a little bit into that?
Uh, I mean, Machine is the program that does it, but it's the only program that I've found that does not lock to a systematic way of doing things. It enables me to. I can program for the environment. I can program for the atmosphere of the machine. And I knew about it a while ago, but
Hey
honestly,
guys,
I didn't
we
have the
are
time to get
back.
into it.
Uh, Apologize, I have to actually cut it short. But what ended up happening was Mr. Donyea has gotten pretty busy, and we had to cut it right there. He was getting into some real good stuff because a lot of people have been asking about his setup using the machine. He actually uses the machine in his church service, programming using the scenes back and forth, and he was just using the MK1 version. He don't have this one. This is the studio. He was using the original, the first one that came out, and I thought it was pretty interesting that someone like him can utilize the machine in his setup. And the way that he started to explain it, he was really speaking on how easy it was to navigate and how quick it is to switch to a song, a different song, and I thought that was pretty unique. So there will actually be a part two. We will go and finish this at a later date. As a matter of fact, that will be sooner than you think. We're going to finish part two, and that's probably another hour, close to an hour worth of information that he shared, and it was really amazing. So, um, for the sake of the video, the time's sake, um, this would be like 3 hours long, you know. So I don't want it to be like, you know, that long, or whatever. But yeah, yeah. So that was Donyea Goodman, legend in the making. All right. And again, we want you guys to visit the website. We got things going on. As a matter of fact, we will blog about this interview pretty soon, and so there will always be a link or you know anything else that we are doing. So I am your host, KJeih. All right, and I'm out of here. Stay tuned for part 2. It's coming soon.